Hi everybody, this is Scott in the Old Curiosity Shop, and today I'm going to do a brief video called What's the Difference Between Stretch Glass, Carnival Glass, and Art Glass? Now I first want to say I'm not a collector of any of these, and I'm certainly not an expert in the field, but I do know how to tell the difference. And the whole reason I want to do this video is because last week I was getting ready to post or list several pieces of glass, some stretch glass and some carnival glass. And I noticed that there's a common mistake that several resellers make when they list such glass. And a lot of it is erroneously labeled or called stretch glass when it's really not stretch glass at all. So I have several examples of all of those types of glass here to show you. Now, I'm not going to get into dates big time and companies and detail. You can find all of that on the net. Just Google it. You really don't need me to just regurgitate Wikipedia articles. So what I do want to focus on is how do you actually look at the glass and tell the difference so that you can list it properly and also search for it properly. So we're going to zoom in now on, is it stretch glass? Is it art glass? Or is it carnival glass? Let's go. Wow, there it is. Looks really pretty in front of the fire. Hopefully it's not getting too hot. That's my grouping of glass I want to show you today. And all of the examples there can be classified as either stretch glass, art glass, or carnival glass. Well, actually, not really. One of them is none of those three things. It's an imposter. Can you spot it? Let me slide in here. That was just a big view from the distance. I'll let you see all that glass. Okay. Let's begin with the imposter. Let's just pull that out right now and, get to the nub of what we're trying to deal with here. There is a piece of glass here that is often referred to online as stretch glass, but it is not. Which one do you think is not the stretch glass? Can you tell which one is not like the others? Okay, it's this bad boy right here. Now, this glass vase, if you look at it, it does appear to have been stretched, right? It looks like somebody, when they were making it, grabbed a hold of this end and stretched on it. But it's actually called swung glass, S-W-U-N-G. They don't really stretch this at all. When this glass is hot, it is actually connected either to the rod on which it was blown or some other type of contraption, and it is allowed to swing. And then gravity does its work and pulls the vase, makes it, gives it that irregular, elongated shape, and so it's really not stretched at all, it's swung. You'll notice there isn't any iridescence to this. It is a complete clear piece of glass. Now, you may say, okay, if that is a piece of swung glass, then what is stretch glass? And why do people confuse the two? Well, let me pull this out from the back, and this is really going to confuse you because this is a piece of art glass as well as stretch glass. But let's first talk about what makes it stretch. Let's go right up here to the rim, and you'll see that there is a very characteristic stretching of the finish on this glass. Do you see this? It's sometimes referred to as onion skin because it does mimic the skin of an onion. So clearly in the light we can see these are actually by collectors referred to as stretch marks. Now when this glass was manufactured, it was not called stretch glass. They didn't call it carnival glass. Those are all terms that came later when this glass was being written about and collected in the 1950s, 60s, and so forth. So originally this would just be called iridescent glass. It was often referred to as the poor man's Tiffany. That's what they would call Carnival Glass, because the glass companies were trying to emulate the work that Steuben was doing and the work that Tiffany was doing. All right, let's focus here. Stretch glass. It's not stretched, it is the stretch marks on the finish that make this a piece of stretch glass. Now, how do they do it? Well, they actually take this glass, and this piece was actually blown, so that actually not only makes this a piece of stretch glass, but it makes it a piece of art glass, because art glass is blown glass. Okay, this is the only piece of art glass you see. None of the rest of these are blown glass. They might have been blown into a mold, but this is the only one that was free-form blown. How do I know that? The Pontile mark, which would have been right here, has been filed away, polished away. The Pontile mark is where this piece of glass would have been broken off of the rod from which it was blown. And then instead of having a rough, jagged piece of glass, it is polished down. So this was blown, and it's art glass, but it has a stretch glass finish on it. Notice how down below you see the iridescence, but as we gradually make our way up, you begin to see that onion skin effect on the glass. How did they do that? Oh look, a little Christmas decoration fell out of there. They did it by spraying the glass with a mineral salt type of substance, and then the glass is reheated. And sometimes during the cooling process, the uneven cooling process, or just the handling of the glass, such as when the top of this was crimped or tooled, you see, into this shape, the glass was being molded or bent while it was hot, and that caused this finish to crack, or not really crack, but to give you those typical stretch marks. So we can see it wasn't sprayed down here. This sat on some type of a tool, and they sprayed the salt mineral mixture on it. They didn't spray anything down there, but they did as you go up the vase. And so we have a stretch finish. There's no stretch finish on this. It's absolute clear glass that has been swung. A lot of these vases were made in the 50s and 60s and 70s, and the real term for this is swung. This piece over here is a piece of art glass because it was blown, and it's also stretch because of the beautiful stretch marks that we see on it. All right, so moving on, we can go pretty quickly now. The rest of the items that you see here are all either going to be Carnival glass or stretch glass. I'm sorry, yes. Now, the Carnival glass doesn't have the stretch appearance. Here's a Fenton bonbon. The base color is green. You always look underneath to see what the base color is. When you hold this up to the light, we see it's a beautiful green, and it has the iridescence on it. Now, this glass is also sprayed, but it's not reheated. The stretch glass is reheated, and then it's allowed to cool, giving you the stretch marks. The Carnival glass is not reheated. So we can see here that this is as I said, a Fenton bonbon in emerald with a beautiful iridescence to it. This is also a piece of Fenton Carnival glass. They loved putting butterflies and grapes on things. And this is, if we put this to the light, we can see its base color is blue. So this would be referred to as a blue Fenton bonbon carnival dish vase. And these both probably date to the 1920s. Carnival glass came on the scene in the teens, and it remained popular, fell out of style into the 1930s. But you know, like Indiana Glass Company is still making made Carnival glass into and even Fenton, really into the 1980s. All right, If you saw my thrift haul videos, you know I just sold this. I've got to get it wrapped up and packed away. That's what? Let's look real close. Do we see stretch marks? No. I see a lot of iridescence, but I don't see any stretch marks, and it doesn't look like onion skin. Yep, that's Carnival Glass. Hearts and Flowers, made by the Diamond Dugan Company in Pennsylvania. Really pretty vase. Dish with the pie crust edge. And that, I've got to get that packed up and shipped out. Let's keep going. Let's look at some more stretch glass. I shouldn't have told you that. I should have made you guess. This one is pretty clear. Let's move in. Yep, look at the telltale onion skin finish. Beautiful iridescence. But again, this was sprayed. It was allowed to cool off, and the uneven cooling process caused these stretch marks to appear on the inside of this bowl. The underside was not sprayed, and it's just iridescent. Several of the major companies would be Northwood, Imperial, Dugan, Diamond. Gosh, I said I was going to start naming names because now I'm going to forget. And I'm not referring to any notes here, so I'm just kind of going by what I can remember in my brain. This is a piece of what? You see stretch marks on it? No, but it is iridescent, and it's got grapes on it. I'll tell you, those companies loved putting grapes on Carnival Glass. That's Carnival Glass. I'm not sure if this is this piece to me looks, well, I just forgot what I was the name of it. And this one is tough. We got to hold it up here to see. It really has a amethyst or a purple base to it. So if we hold that up to the light, we can actually see that that's what it would be referred to as, a deep amethyst or purple. And that's a piece of Carnival Glass. And I guess I should have made some notes, because now I'm just going to tell you who I think that's made. Northwood. I think that's Northwood. It looks very Northwood wood to me, and they put grapes on everything. This piece is Northwood, and it's a very nice piece of, it's a big bowl, what would be called a master berry bowl, usually, although in this size it could be a console bowl. That's called the Grape and Gothic Arch pattern. We see it's iridescent, so it's Carnival, not stretch, and not art glass because it was done in a mold. The iridescence is on the outside and on the inside. And if we hold that up to the light, we can also see it has a beautiful blue base color to it. All right, we're gonna get a little tricky here. What's this? Come on, I'm not gonna tell you. Let's take a look at the bottom. Well, I see lines, so it was done in a mold, so it can't be art glass because art glass was blown and not molded. It's iridescent. I wonder if it's Carnival Glass. Well, no, I don't know. Let me look very carefully at, I don't see a whole lot of stretches, but I do see onion skin. Yep, this is a piece of stretch glass, not Carnival. You know, the more you do this, the more you get to realize that. The other thing I forgot to mention is that stretch glass usually doesn't have any design on it. It's usually just plain glass with no, oops, that didn't get chipped, don't worry about that. With no design on it. We can see that's very different from Carnival with all this fancy grapes and whatnot. So yes, this is a piece of stretch glass, and it's very desirable in ruby red or this deep red color. Red seems to be the most difficult color, or the color that's difficult to get hold of, and people do love red. This is a little sherbet, and again, if you look closely, you don't see a lot of stretch marks. I'm trying to get this to focus for you, but you really do see that telltale onion skin effect. So we know it is definitely a piece of stretch glass. All right, we already looked at that. This one right here, I shouldn't have put this in there. Anybody who has been in the antique or the collecting business for a while has seen 1,000 of these. There was a time in the 1980s when people were beating themselves, or, to the front of the line to grab these. Not as popular nearly as they were. This is the old Iris and Herringbone Jeanette pattern of depression glass. They made dinner sets, candlesticks, plates, cups, saucers, everything. If you want to call it, all right, it's iridescent, yes. Was it really produced as Carnival Glass? Well, not really, but you'll see it named as Carnival Glass, and I don't have a problem if people say that, but Carnival Glass collectors are not going to consider this to be a collectible piece of Carnival Glass the way these pieces are, the way that piece is. This is more of really a depression glass piece. Jeanette made this from either the late 20s or early 30s and all throughout the 1930s. It's very popular. There's a lot of it out there. Very easy to come by. Iris and Herringbone, not a whole lot of value to that. A couple of pieces left here. Let's keep moving and see what we've got. Well, while we're looking at orange, let's take a look at these. These are attributed to the Federal Glass Company. And again, you can call this Carnival Glass if you'd like. It does have iridescence to it, but it's really depression glass. And once again, Carnival Glass collectors don't really consider this true Carnival Glass. It's a point that could be argued, but it's really marketed as depression glass. And these plates were made, I believe, from 1932 into the late 30s. Please don't quote me on these dates, and I know I'm not giving exact dates. These are estimations. Again, this is really meant to be just how to tell the difference between the glass and not so much dates and history and everything. So that's what those are, and there are 3 of these here for you to look at. Right, we're almost finished. This is, let's take a good look at it. There are the mold marks. I don't see any onion skin to this. I certainly don't see any stretch marks. And it's got all this fancy stuff on it. It must be Carnival Glass. It is. It's the question mark pattern. It's called Peach Opal by the Dugan Company, or usually called the Dugan Diamond Company. When the Dugan family got out of the business, the Diamond Company, they changed their names. You can see the history of it online if you're interested in it. But they made a lot of this peach, what's called peach opal. And again, this is a bonbon dish. Okay, 3 pieces left. And let's see. These might be a little tricky. Let's look at this one. If we hold this up to the light, let's zoom in. Beautiful iridescence. What's the base color? Purple? Amethyst? Okay. Doesn't have any decoration on it. No grapes or butterflies or peacocks or anything like that. But I don't see any stretch marks. And I'm having a hard time seeing whether it has that sort of onion skin effect. I don't think it does. This is a piece that really, if you want to, I think you could argue either way. I wouldn't necessarily call it stretch because I don't see the stretch marks and because I don't see the onion skin effect. I probably would go with Carnival Glass, but what makes it unusual is that there's no pattern to it. So you know what? You could just call it whatever you want. Carnival, iridescent, but I think it would be a stretch to call it stretch glass. Because if we look at this piece next to it, again, we see iridescence. Let's look very closely. If we can focus in, I'm going to do my best to get you to see that it does have, and this is very difficult because it's sort of an ice blue color, and so it's hard for you to see. Maybe there you can see it better. Notice how as we go up and close to the top, there we go, we see that onion skin effect. It's a very fine effect, and you really need to handle this glass, feel it, talk to experts about it, find it out in the wild, and you really are able to get a feel of whether we're talking stretch or carnival, and that's definitely stretch glass. Beautiful piece, console bowl in ice blue. This would have had matching candlesticks with it on either side, and they are no longer with it. And finally, the last piece. This was a typical form in the 1920s. It is a covered candy dish. And if we take a look at this piece, I shall remove the lid first. Sometimes you'll see it like that, being called a goblet. It's not a goblet, it's a candy dish that's missing its lid. Turn it upside down, we can see the bottom part was never sprayed. So it's just beautiful clear blue glass. But if we look at the outside of it, and especially if we move our way up in the light, we can see that fine, fine onion skin. We don't see a lot of stretch marks because once this was reheated, it was allowed to cool, but it wasn't really handled. Nothing was done to it, as opposed to this piece. When this top was crimped and this glass was bent, it really caused stretches and stretch marks to appear, and that's why we see so many stretch marks in that, but not in this. Even on the lid, it's very subtle, but you can see if you zoom in, there's definitely a shimmer to it, a kind of a satiny sheen. And this would be considered a stretch glass candy dish. So the takeaway here, and the main thing really is, this is swung glass and not stretch. When you see these vases like that are elongated, and there's no iridescence to it, there's no onion skin on there, that's a swung glass vase. All right, so I hope that you enjoyed looking at all this glass. It really is pretty glass. I've got to get it packed up and shipped out, some of it. And if you've got any questions, comments, your own thoughts about stretch glass, art glass, carnival glass, I'd love to hear from you. So this is Scott from the Old Curiosity Shop saying, see you next week. I probably won't be doing any more videoing this week. This is Holy Week, and to everyone who observes it and celebrates Easter, I wish for you a very meaningful and blessed Easter. Thursday, of course, is Holy Thursday, Good Friday, and then Easter Sunday. I would hope and pray that it's meaningful for you as it will be for me. So again, everybody, this is Scott in the Old Curiosity Shop saying thanks for watching, and so long for now.